Hello, this is Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series where I get to ask hopefully thought-provoking questions of my colleague, my esteemed friend, David Parker, who is the author of two wonderful books, Income and Wealth, and his latest book, A San Francisco Conservative, hence the title of our podcast series. And David joins us from San Francisco. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. It's a nice day. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, despite the black and white Golden Gate Bridge over my shoulder here, I'm actually in Connecticut. So I would love to visit out there sometime soon. I know sometimes before the cameras start rolling, we talk about great restaurants and the wine country and all of that. So I really love San Francisco. I've got to get back there. But I have a topic in mind today. I always learn so much from our conversations, and that topic is democracy. And I know that when people listen to recordings of this nature, I don't want to date this too much, but at the time that we're recording this, a congressional committee has been having a number of hearings about what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. Insurrection, what was Donald Trump's role, and so on. A number of, Capitol police officers were attacked and so on. And so it certainly got me thinking about, how fragile democracy is and where are we headed. And I know that you're, not only are you a lifelong educator, but you're a lifelong scholar and student, and your books are written in a beautiful academic, studious way, even though you're in the trenches as an entrepreneur. You're not just closeted away in an ivory tower somewhere. But I know you've written about the cultures that really had the first ideas about democracy that our founding fathers turned to for their inspiration. And I just wondered what your thoughts are at a time like this, when a lot of us are concerned, can we really maintain our democracy? What should we be thinking about?
I don't see the January 6th as a sign of the end of democracy. That was just some crazy president being a baby. I don't want to lose, so I'm going to send some people and hit you on the head. A bullet. That's not the end of democracy. The fact that America is arguing like we do, that's a pretty healthy sign. And if we're locking horns red and blue, that's a healthy sign. People like Hitler came to power. There was nobody arguing. He just came to power. Germans are not used to arguing about things. In the Soviet Union, they came to power by hitting everybody on the head who didn't agree. We don't do that here. That was an incident that's just a childish incident. Democracy is fragile because you could have somebody start subverting it. If we start dismantling the Constitution, and a lot of people like Franklin Roosevelt, and he did some good things, and he was a powerful leader, a genuine leader. But he wasn't getting his way, and he just bullied the Supreme Court. Bullied. Benjamin Cardoso was a Chief Justice. He says, literally, he frightened the whole court. He says, if you don't do what I say, vote for the New Deal programs that I ran on in 1932. If you don't put them in, I'm going to add 6 justices, and they'll approve everything I pass. I will have established a dictatorship. I will have thrown out checks and balances. Everything this Constitution is about, I'm going to destroy it. Me and my megalomaniac brothers, Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin and the guy in Japan, we're running the world now. I'm not joking about that. A lot of people were upset. There's a famous economist who I like, F.A. Hayek. He said he was sitting in a cab at the day that I think Roosevelt died, and the cab driver says, I liked Roosevelt, but he never should have tried to add 6 justices to the Supreme Court. He says that was really upsetting to him, just the cab driver. So that means that upset a lot of people. To this day, that's a real black mark. It's like Trump saying, I'm putting my people in office, and I'm putting my people on the Supreme Court, and I'll add some more if they don't get more. And I want my way at all times. So,
yeah. Well, it is an interesting
the
time.
Constitution forbids that from happening, and and didn't happen. So I'm not worried about our in the United States. We're not worried about our democracy.
Yeah.
We have an educated citizenry. That's not going to fail here.
Yeah. So the fact that there's debate, you know, you've written a wonderful essay, The Red and the Blue. The fact that there's debate should give us reassurance that democracy is working. That's what it looks like, right?
Yeah, you want people talking. You don't want people not talking.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't talk in the Soviet Union. They don't talk in Cuba. They don't talk in Iran. They're not talking among themselves. They're not talking in public.
Yeah.
You don't want that. Here, people are speaking in public.
What do you say to somebody like me who I guess you would call me you know, New England liberal? You know, I've almost always, although not 100%, voted the Democratic ticket. And you know, when I hear about what the Supreme Court has decided, you know, this year as far as overturning Roe versus Wade and saying, well, the government really shouldn't interfere with environmental controls of companies and, you know, various things like this. We should have more freedom to walk around with concealed weapons and so on. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't really like the way this is headed. Our current president, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Joe Biden. It sounds like not too many people are fans of Joe Biden. His popularity is abysmal, but certainly he has a hard job. This is certainly a challenging time in American history. But I'm not sure I really want Joe Biden to add 6 justices to the Supreme Court. So you're telling me I should just feel reassured because debate is going on.
And the justices that were added by Trump, they're constitutional. They're literalists. So I'm happy that they're literalists. If I don't agree with all their opinions, I believe a woman has a right to an abortion, but that's not in the Constitution. I've read the Constitution, and that's what the justices said. Clarence Thomas, maybe the most conservative, says that that's an issue for the states to decide. He didn't say anything whether he's against it or not. And the lawyers of the Constitution, lawyers, that's all they are, appointed lawyers. They weren't elected. They were appointed. They shouldn't be making law for the nation. The Congress makes law for the nation. And that's what they said. Send it back to the states. If the states want to do it, they do it. And if you're living in a state and you don't like it, move to another state, because not every state is going to cancel abortion, that's for sure. Only a few are. So this is not the end of the world. If you're in California, your life hasn't changed. If you're in New England and Connecticut, your life hasn't changed. Those states are not going to make a law like that. And gun control, it's the Second Amendment. There's nothing to discuss. Yeah. There's 330 million people in this country, and there's probably 330 million guns. What are you going to do? It's like 330 million people are smoking marijuana. We're going to forbid that. And 330, they're probably drinking martinis, and they're probably having wine with their meal. Are we going to forbid that? So the Constitution is only one little page. It's just a set of rules that you can, and stop arguing about it. Stop trying to move on. That's what progressivism, moving on. The height of Rome at its very best was 1st century. It was the most free. Speech, social behavior, and orgies galore, I guess, and the economy was free. And Rome was and 5th century Athens flourished because the century before, a guy named Solon, Solom, they hired him. He was a very successful merchant who was also a philosopher, and he almost like invented the comparative advantage. He says, Greece, stop producing everything. The soil here is lousy. Stop farming. Just make pottery. and grow olive trees and sell oil and paint the pottery, and you got good ships. That's it. Just trade for everything. Don't make anything yourself. And the economy flourished beyond all expectation. And first century Rome flourished beyond all expectation. And this nation flourished from the beginning up until 1933. We went progressive and reversed everything that this nation was about. And when they got away from those kind of freedoms, those civilizations crashed. Greek 5th century eventually crashed a few centuries later, and Rome in 476 crashed. And that's a big lesson for us on another field. The Huns came in, not with swords, with sledgehammers, and sledgehammered Rome to smithereens, dust and chalk. Part of the Colosseum is still up because they just got too tired. They couldn't get that fourth wall. They had enough. They made their point, which I don't know what the point was, but they knocked that city down. And why didn't the Roman soldiers lift a finger? The strongest military in Europe didn't lift a finger. They hadn't been paid. Why hadn't they not been paid? All the tax revenue collected, there was tax revenue, went to pay interest on the debt. There was no money left for any services. And we're that close at this point. The numbers are huge and they can be paid off, as huge as they are. But Social Security and Medicare and probably national defense, it's all, education is all paid for by borrowing. And if we keep that up, the military is going to say, we're not, we're through, you pay us. That hasn't happened and it's not going to happen. But that's a good lesson. You can't have a $4 trillion yearly budget deficit, a $30 trillion national debt, and approximately $100 trillion unfunded liabilities. I'm not making this up. You can just go under any search engines. The first thing that pops up, US debt, is a clock ticking. Tick, 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 tick. Every second the money is going up. This is all public knowledge. I'm not making anything up. So that can't go on forever. We're at risk. It's just unhealthy and incorrect.
Yeah.
We could pay it off. So it's not going to happen here, but something will happen. Maybe a bad, crazy person will come into office for president, and maybe some bad congressman will combine bad president, bad congressman, and maybe a bad Supreme Court. And whoa, things get start looking like Latin America. We'll be a banana republic.
I'll just say real quick, we're a little past our midpoint of this conversation, but you are listening to or watching a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring myself, Tom Martin, the journalist asking the questions, and the esteemed author, David Parker, author of Income and Wealth and the San Francisco Conservative. Are there other concerns we should have, that sort of red flags? National debt is certainly one of them. I mean, that's quite a story that you just shared with us. Are there other really controversial issues that we really need to pay attention to?
Yeah, one of my favorite slogans. I'm a musician. In fact, I didn't hear the Senate hearings last night for January 6th because my band was playing. So I'd rather play than go watch television.
And life went on. Amazing.
And life went on. But in fact, my wife told me when I came home, and she's a progressive liberal Democrat. Just Liz Cheney spoke pretty well. She says, if she runs for president, I might consider voting for that woman. She stood up to Trump. She did. She had some courage. What was I saying? So one of my musicians in my band was one of the cats in my band was in a Brooklyn barbershop with the brothers. And one brother says, government's got to spend more money to help the people who can't having trouble. We need more housing. We need better schools. We need this and that. And another guy stood up and says, if you can solve problems with money, you don't have a problem. Perfect. That's everything I'm talking about. And that's what Jerry Brown in 1976 was talking about when he ran for president. Don't be asking government to do everything, because some of these problems are not solvable with money or with government. If you want a classic example, in 1964, the start of the war on poverty, Lyndon Johnson says, we're fighting a war in Vietnam and we have a huge budget deficit, but we're not going to tolerate poverty anymore in this country. We're a rich nation. It's unconscionable, was his word. And we're going to solve poverty once and for all. I'm going to spend big time and we're going to knock that off. Poverty was about 15%. And you can go to the US Census Bureau. Boom, first thing that pops up, if you ask it, the needle didn't budge from 1964 to today. It's poverty remaining 15%. And now just the war on poverty, we're 23 trillion in debt, 4 times what we spent for World War II. And poverty hasn't moved. You can't solve personal problems. Get up in the morning, go to work with money. Can't solve it. Stop. That's one of my themes. And if you want to spend money, progressives say tax the rich. And one of my themes is you can't. All taxes mostly are paid for by the middle class. They don't know how to get out of paying taxes. They don't have tax write-offs. They don't have income producing assets they can borrow against and never show any income. That's what people who have money do. Their accountants set it up so that that happens. They're not paying taxes. And the poor aren't paying taxes. Everything is paid for with the middle class. Some hard-working person, 10, 12 hours a day, he's paying for people who are not working, who don't feel like working. He's paying for some father who runs away and leaves a wife with 3 kids and not paying a dime. Let that person who's working, washing dishes every day, let him support that woman. That's progressivism. Can't solve problems with money, or you can't solve problems that are personal with money.
Yeah. No, that's an important lesson. I've learned a lot once again, as always. And so I want to thank you, David.
I'm not saying vote Republican. I'm a Democrat.
Okay.
I just talk this stuff.
People wonder about that label of San Francisco conservative.
Not that conservative, not that conservative.
Apparently, I know. Well, I just want to thank our viewers, thank our listeners for joining us for another episode. I definitely encourage you to learn about and buy copies of David's books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. You can do that by visiting his website, davidparkeressays.com, and by going to Amazon. So thanks again. I learned a lot and look forward to our next conversation.
You too. Great. Okay. Thank you.